Hello Raptors fans, and welcome back to Raptors Report. Today we will be discussing the Toronto Raptors game against the Brooklyn Nets. But before we do that, I want to talk about Immanuel Quickley and a broader discussion on the importance of positional roles within the NBA, because I think that there have been some very interesting developments when it comes to team building over the past couple decades as the NBA has evolved. But I think that there's also some lessons that we can learn from the past and things that are still very important when it comes to team building. And one thing that was on full display yesterday was the importance of having a lead ball handler on the Toronto Raptors. And one of the players who has been performing that role for most of the season has been Scottie Barnes. RJ Barrett had that role for the first portion of the season while Scottie Barnes was injured. And Scottie Barnes has been the lead ball handler on the team since he's returned. And the results have been kind of mixed. While there are certainly some pluses to having Scottie Barnes on the ball, there are also some major negatives. I think that one of the biggest negatives is the fact that Scottie Barnes has to begin his offensive process at the top of the arc, beyond the three-point line. I think that one of the ways that he is very effective is when he is close to the basket. When he's able to get 15 feet and in, he is a dangerous player. He can score next to the rim, he has great touch, and now he has added that very impressive mid-post jumper, both fadeaway and pull-up. So I think that there's a couple of reasons that you would not want to have him start the offense at the top of the arc. And one such issue is the fact that he has a couple of things working against him there. The first of all is the handle. The handle that Scottie Barnes has is good for a player of his size. So let's not lose track of things. I think that for a player who is 6'10" and his physical size, he is good with the ball in his hands. He can dribble with both hands. He can dribble under pressure, he can use escape dribbles, he can go between his legs, he can do all of that sort of thing. He's not a huge risk to turn the ball over when he has the ball in his hands. The issue, however, is that he can't quite beat his man off of the dribble in a one-on-one situation, and really requires an advantage situation in order to drive past his man. Sometimes he can get that via a screen, although for the most part, many teams have countered that by going under the screen. And then he has to either force up a jump shot, which has been very hit and miss this season, or he has to drive into the player and then begin a series of post-ups. And this is kind of where his game has developed recently that I have enjoyed, is that he can use his dribble to get to the elbow or near the baseline, and he's able to turn that into an accurate turnaround jump shot. And I think that that is good. I think that is a good sign for him being a ball handler. But one of the issues is that he hasn't been able to get all the way to the basket while he has the ball in his hands at the top of the arc. And as a lead ball handler in the NBA, that is kind of the goal. You want to put as much pressure on the defense as possible. You want to get past your man, force the defense to rotate so you can create passes. There's a reason that he has the ball in his hands. One of them is the fact that he has some of the best vision, not just at his position, but in my opinion, in the NBA. He is very good at reading the floor. He understands where the help is going to come from. He has very good court mapping. He understands how plays are going to develop, where players are going to be, and he can deliver accurate passes to players either on the perimeter or inside. The unfortunate part, though, is when you don't create enough of an advantage, where you don't force the defense out of position enough, you're going to have to start taking harder and harder passes. And kind of that's where the Raptors were before Immanuel Quickley returned to the lineup, is that other teams were really reading the scouting report and understanding that a lot of the assists that Scottie Barnes was getting was off of difficult passes through multiple defenders, over players with lobs. He would try and thread needles, and oftentimes that would mean you'd have to put in a little bit of extra mustard on the ball, and it's harder to catch for the player who is cutting to the rim, and also it can get picked off. So if there's a player who's standing between him and the player he's trying to deliver it to, they can wait for the ball and steal it. And as teams started to kind of figure out what to do with when he was handling the ball, that became an issue with the Toronto Raptors offense. With Immanuel Quickley back, Immanuel Quickley although he is not a pass-first point guard, you might be a little deceived because yesterday he had 15 assists on the game, which is a huge, very impressive mark. But he's not really a pass-first point guard. He's not a guy who is trying to look for his teammates first. With that said, his ability to handle the ball and his first step, that's another thing that Scottie Barnes lacks a little bit of as a player, is players who are at his size. So Giannis is bigger, LeBron James similar sized, but those players have better first steps than Scottie Barnes. That's not a knock on Scottie. Those two are like superhuman athletes. They are unbelievable with their first step. They're extremely explosive and have been for their whole career. And that's generally how they create an advantage. They just explode past their man with the ball in their hands. And Scottie has been dealing with an injury, so he's not as explosive as he has been in the past. And also, I just don't think that his first step is as elite as those guys. With Immanuel Quickley, there's more burst there. There's more quick twitch muscle. He can put his defender on the back foot a lot more easily, and it's a two-step thing. Players really have to respect Immanuel Quickley's shooting. He is one of the best players, in my opinion, in the league at generating his own shot off of the dribble. He can use a live dribble, receive a screen, and then pop a shot at any moment. At any moment. When you have that ability, what do players have to do? They have to play up on you. They have to come into you. They have to try and take away your space so that you don't feel comfortable taking those shots. When that happens, he can use his burst. He can use his explosiveness off the dribble to get past his man and create an advantage situation. When that happens and the defense rotates, everything opens up. Your offense starts to behave normally with a pick and roll. Most of the time, a pick and roll creates a small advantage. Teams have become very good at defending the pick and roll using a various set of techniques. However, there is still a bit of an advantage created. And of course, you have to read the play correctly. You have to understand the different coverages that you can employ against a pick and roll and then make the correct decision. But when that happens, generally, you can create an open shot, either for yourself or for your teammates. And when you have a lead ball handler with that ability to create an advantage, then things start to open up. And so the reason I'm bringing this up is because we're going back to the original point, which is why positions matter in the NBA. And maybe they don't matter as much, and sometimes there's a blending of positions and different roles, and things are a lot more complicated than they were back in the day. But one of the things remains is that guards have guard skills. And one of the reasons that point guards have the roles that they do is because they possess a certain set of skills. Some of those skills were the ones that I mentioned already: the ability to shoot, the first step, the ability to break guys down off of the dribble. Those things are all very important elements for an offense. And the Raptors have kind of tried to learn that the hard way. Having Scottie Barnes play at the top of the arc, maybe he can do that, but I don't think that that's necessarily his forte. I don't think that that is his best skill as a player. So when you have another player playing that role, he can do what's best for him. And he just came off of his best game of the season, in my opinion. I thought he was fantastic, not just on offense, on defense too, but we'll discuss that when we get to the player evaluations. Circling back, why am I talking about positions? The Raptors had to learn a valuable lesson about the importance of centers a couple of years ago. When the whole Vision 6-9 thing happened, one of the popular ideas at the time, and I admit that I was sort of fell under its sway a little bit, was that you could create rim protection by having a lot of large forwards with defensive skills and rebounding. You could kind of have a center by committee. And I was like, well, that kind of makes sense. Having large forwards, they can switch, they can do all of that kind of thing. They can protect the basket a little bit. If you just say 1 + 1 + 1, that equals 3. The issue, though, is that the Toronto Raptors started to run into problems with that philosophy. And as you know, they tried to run Scottie Barnes, Precious Achiuwa, and Pascal Siakam at those 3 forward/center slots. And what happened was that while it made sense kind of in theory, it really did not translate very well to the page. It turns out that having a bunch of players who are good defensively as forwards, you can generate some rim protection, but it does not equal a center. It is not really a great replacement for a center. And the Raptors were getting absolutely demolished by opposing bigs. So large bruising centers would get into the paint and eat their lunch. Just grab offensive rebounds, bully their way to the basket. They were like ogres, just blasting through the Toronto Raptors defense. Another thing is that the rim protection. Of course, you can switch on the perimeter and you can make it hard to get into the paint. But once teams got there, maybe it was a little more difficult to get there, but once they got there, it was just barbecue chicken. It was like a layup line, because centers, as the primary help defender, will come over and provide help at the rim, and a lot of the time that will be substantial help. It will create rim deterrence. Players won't want to go in there, and if they do go in there, we saw it a bunch yesterday, Jakob Poeltl, giant man, coming over to just smack the ball out of bounds. It's a similar thing with the point guard. You can try and replicate a point guard and what they do, but it turns out that division of labor, having specialists, guys who are way better at one thing than another, and having them play a role where those skills shine, that still holds weight even in the modern NBA. And I don't want to be the old head who says that the old ways are the best and we just have to go back to what works, and a point guard is a point guard and you have to pass the ball more than you shoot. No, okay? Point guard position, more than any other position, I think, in the modern NBA has changed. There's no longer the pass-first point guard. That's almost extinct. But what has remained is the fact that you need a guy who can handle the ball, who can use screens effectively, create an advantage. And a lot of the time it comes down to, maybe you're not going to see Immanuel Quickley have 15 assist nights like he did yesterday, but what you're going to see is him creating advantages with the ball in his hands. And I think that that's really important for the Toronto Raptors to field a competent offense, an offense where it looks normal. Gosh, return to normalcy. And I don't know if it's going to make the Raptors win a ton of games this season. I think that this is a favorable game for the Raptors, but it is nice to be able to see the Toronto Raptors play a game where things kind of look like they should. And we'll get into the player evaluations right now because I think it's a great segue. We will talk Immanuel Quickley. Immanuel Quickley was great. Fantastic return to form. He was on a minutes restriction, quote unquote, because he played 32 minutes that game. I don't know what a minutes restriction, maybe 5-minute restriction. What was he going to play? 37 minutes? Who knows? But they let him play. They let him off the leash. He went bonkers. 21 points on 16 shots. He was 3 of 7 from 3. So they were really missing that guy who could generate their own 3-point shot. 4 of 4 from the line. He drew fouls. The big one, 15 assists, 1 turnover. He was running the show, doing a fantastic job. I loved it. He plays with a joy and an energy that is infectious. He had just a wonderful game. Generally, just getting to see the team look like this is just a wonderful feeling. And I don't know if it's going to continue. I don't even know if it's good if it continues, if they keep winning games, but I'll just say I'm satisfied, and Immanuel Quickley was a big part of that. Really great return to the lineup for him. Next up, Scottie Barnes. Scottie Barnes had a masterclass game, and I think, remember when I was saying, Scottie Barnes, I think he can handle the ball at the top of the arc, but I don't think it is where he is best. I think he can do it. I think it should be a part of his game. I think that when he has a favorable matchup, and in certain situations with the bench lineup when Quickley isn't on the floor, I think that should be something that he goes to. However, I think that he should mix it up more. He is a big guy. He is very strong and agile and has good court vision, and he likes to start inside 15 feet from the basket. And boy, did he ever have it going last night. 33 points on 18 shots. He missed 4 shots from the field, one of his most efficient nights of the season. He was 3 of 4 from 3, so once he had it going, once he was rolling, he's a momentum player. I've mentioned this in the past. Once he was feeling good, then he started shooting the threes. Then they started to go in. He had the magic touch last night. He lobbed in a 3-point shot. So he was trying to hit Agbaji for a dunk, and he was just too accurate. The ball went in the basket when he tossed it up. So just a sort of blessed night for him. 13 rebounds, all defensive. I've mentioned this in the past, okay? The tandem of Jakob Poeltl and Scottie Barnes on the defensive glass is so important for the Raptors. Having those two on the back lines, those two big guys who can grab boards, 13 rebounds, you can't understate how important that is. 5 assists, so they took the ball out of his hands a little bit more. He was more of a play finisher, less of the guy initiating the offense, so the assists are going to be a little lower maybe. 2 steals, 1 block, 3 turnovers. I thought it was a fantastic game from Scottie Barnes. He looked rejuvenated, and after the game, he went on to praise Immanuel Quickley for a lot of the things that I was saying. The ability to bring the ball up the court, the ability to get into the paint, all of the things that, you expect a point guard to be able to do. Scottie Barnes was right there cheering his teammate on, saying how nice it was to have him back. So it's good to see that Scottie Barnes, while of course, I think that having the ball in his hands, having the ball at the top of the arc, being a point guard, it's an element of his game that he can continue to build on. It's not quite there yet, I think, as the lead ball handler, but as a secondary ball handler, as a secondary playmaker. Once the advantage has been created and he gets the ball in his hands, maybe on a short roll, maybe as a dump off, maybe just giving him the ball a little bit further into the post when the defense isn't completely keyed in on him, then you're going to start to see him being able to make those really advanced plays with his excellent court vision. So excellent game for him. Loved it. Next up, oh my goodness, this was such a relief to see Grady Dick kind of bust out of his slump. He had a great game, and not just on the offensive end. So he had 22 points on 17 shots. He was 4 of 8 from 3. He was nailing shots above the break, in the corner, doing it all. I think he should have had a bunch of free throws this game. I think the refs were just being really way too stingy with the whistle when he was driving to the basket. He absorbed contact. He was getting bodied. I think he should have shot at least 1 free throw. He had none, but great scoring game. Outside of that, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 steals, only 2 turnovers. The 3 steals, okay, what does that tell me? And I think that this is something that he can use to his advantage. So there's another guy on the team who gets a lot of steals, even though he isn't the greatest defender. And his name is Kelly Olynyk, and he has done that throughout his career. And the reason that he does that is because he doesn't have very good foot speed. And Grady Dick is obviously much faster than Kelly Olynyk, but on the perimeter, the foot speed is still an issue. When he gets into the middle of the floor, so if he's the primary defender on a ball handler at the top of the floor, he has to navigate screens and they're trying to isolate against him. Sometimes that can be a little bit of an issue for him. One of the ways you can combat that if you don't have the greatest foot speed is being smart with your hands. And of course, you're going to pick up some fouls here. Sometimes, you play with your hands, you can get baited, you can smack their forearm, or they get you reaching in and bait you into a foul. But if you don't have great foot speed, if you can't go east-west very quickly when a player's trying to drive past you, one of the ways you can make up for that is by poking the ball loose, and he did that a bunch last night. He got his hands on loose balls, he grabbed steals, he got in the passing lanes, he poked the ball loose a couple of times. Those are ways that guys who don't have great foot speed can contribute. And God bless him, like Grady Dick is trying on defense. He really is. I don't think this is a matter of him being a lazy guy not trying. I think that it is literally just lateral foot speed, and maybe he can get better at that, get closer to average, but right now, maybe it's best for him to try that and be a guy who plays a little bit more handsy defense. And you're going to pick up some more fouls that way, but it might be worth it. But on offense, man, he was great. Hit a bunch of shots. He was also doing a good job of attacking those advantage situations, getting into the paint. He had a number of very beautiful layups. His game, when he converts a layup, is gorgeous. The finger rolls, the up and under layups, all of those things, it's just kind of picture perfect. Love watching him play on offense, especially when he has a shot going. So I thought he had a great game. Everybody really played well. Jakob Poeltl played well, played great defense, 12 points on 10 shots, 9 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, 2 blocks, 0 turnovers, protecting the basket. And I mentioned this on social media during the game. Just when Poeltl is on the floor, you really notice that, you feel confident that they're not going to get an easy layup. He covers ground very well. He moves and anticipates when players are going to get into the paint, and then he provides competent help defense. It's really just a very solid last line of defense. You love to see it. 2 blocks. A lot of the time, he'll be the rim deterrent, and then when you really need it, if a team is just like, okay, I'm going to go for it, I'm going to try and get the layup, even though he's there, he'll just no-sir it and send it out. It's a comfort blanket situation when you have a good defensive center. You're not too worried about getting abused inside. And he's been that guy all season long. 4 offensive rebounds as well. He took advantage of the Nets. He was able to bully them inside. Nick Claxton is their center, and while he's a decent center, he's pretty thin, he's pretty wiry. Jakob Poeltl is a big, kind of solid dude. He can push his way into the paint even against guys like Nick Claxton. I thought he had a great game, just very solid. He's bumped down in the pecking order. He's not going to get a ton of shots, but he doesn't need to. He can have a great game even when he doesn't take a ton of shots. So great game from him. Ochai Agbaji, he has been on a slide recently. He busted out of that slide. 14 points on 5 of 8 shooting, 2 of 2 from 3, so he was perfect from 3. 3 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, 2 blocks, 1 turnover. Weirdly enough, in the Boston game, I praised his defense. I said that, okay, he didn't have a very good night on offense. He was like 1 for 7 or something like that for 2 points. But I said like, oh, but he was doing a really good job on defense. Jaylen Brown didn't have a very good game because he was there and guarding him. This is kind of the opposite night. He was guarding Cam Johnson, who had a very efficient 24 points on 12 shots. I think he was out of position a couple of times. Cam Johnson has really kind of transformed himself into a close, I'm not going to say number 1 option because he does play off the ball a little bit more, but he is a really good shooter and he can do a lot of stuff. And I think Ochai was a little late on some of the 3-point shots that Cam was attempting, and he got into the paint a bunch of times and scored. So kind of the opposite night. He had a good game on offense and maybe not a great game on defense, but you know what? I will take it because he has been struggling with the shot recently, and he didn't struggle last night, and the Raptors won anyway. So next up, we'll go to the bench. We'll start with Jakob Poeltl. Jakob Poeltl has been struggling recently. He had a really, really rough night in Boston. He was 1 for 10. He was a lot better this game. He played 18 minutes, so the highest off of the bench, tied with Jamal Shead. He had the most points off of the bench. He had 11 points on 4 of 6 shooting. He was 2 of 4 from 3, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. Just a very good all-around game. And then the defense is still very good for him. He is very good at tracking players around the court. He had a couple of very nice moves where he was able to create offense for himself. I think that that is a plus skill for him in the future. I think that if the Raptors give him more rope, more on-ball reps, especially maybe off of the bench, if they allow him to get more touches in that role, I think that that could be a growth area for him. I think that that's where he could be an impact player for the Raptors down the road, is by being able to create his own shot and allowing him to handle the ball a little bit more. I have been impressed with his moves, as I've mentioned before, and last night was great because he was efficient with the moves. I said in yesterday's episode, I said, I want to be able to see the moves translate into made shots and efficient nights, and we saw it last night. He had a good game. Next up, we will talk Jamal Shead. Jamal Shead continues to impress me. He didn't have a good shooting night in Boston. God, I'm just saying that over and over and over again. Nobody had a good shooting night in Boston, but last night he did. 7 points on 7 shots, 5 assists, 1 steal, with 3 turnovers. So that is a bit of an issue, but I think he played better defense as well. I thought that he was doing a really good job getting up and into guys. He had a really nice possession in the 4th quarter where the Raptors turned the ball over and the Nets got the ball up in transition to Tyrese Martin, and Jamal Shead came over and did just enough to challenge the shot to make him miss. And he's always doing that kind of stuff. He's kind of poking his hands in, he's staying attached, he's being pesky. And when you're a player the size of Jamal Shead, peskiness is kind of the name of the game. That's what you want to be. You want to be up and in. You want to use your quickness to stay attached to players. You want to be that little gnat that is very annoying, and he can do that pretty well. And I also enjoy him running the point. He can run the point. He is, we mentioned point guards and guard skills. He has that ability to handle the ball and make good reads when he has the ball in his hands. The offense looks like it's running smoothly when he's in the game. So I am enjoying what I'm seeing from Jamal Shead. I think that he hasn't been impressive, especially as a rookie. Next up, Kelly Olynyk. Kelly Olynyk had an uneven game. So he finished with 7 points, 2 rebounds, an assist, and a block. And in the first half, his post defense was horrible. He is just physically limited. He can't bother players when they are driving into the lane and they've picked up their dribble. So in the first half, it was a struggle. And every time he stepped on the floor, it looked like the Nets were looking to attack. In the second half, however, I thought he actually had a kind of underrated defensive and rebounding game. So Nick Claxton in the past, in previous seasons when he was kind of looking like a rising star, had a couple of games against the Raptors where he just stole their lunch money, beat them up on the inside, did the stuff I was talking about when they didn't have a real center. He would grab offensive rebounds and really punish the Raptors. But if you watched it in the game, Kelly Olynyk was really neutralizing Nick Claxton on the offensive glass. Kelly Olynyk is not a small guy. He was able to push Nick Claxton under the basket, away from the boards, and secure. Maybe he didn't secure the rebound, but if you're the center, your job maybe isn't to get the defensive rebound, it's to make sure that the other team doesn't get an offensive rebound. So he did a good job in the second half of cleaning up the paint. So got to give him a couple of kudos there. He hit a three. He was perfect from three. So again, he was perfect from the field. 3 of 3, 1 of 1 from 3. So, if you're a general manager, you need 3-point shooting. Hey, Raptors got a 3-point shooter here. In general, it was a blowout. I thought the Raptors really played just a great overall game. It was close in the first half. The Nets hung in there. I think just watching the game, I was like, this is a team they can beat. They just need some stops and scores. They need to stop turning the ball over. They need to play smarter, and they can win this game. And they have the tools to beat a Brooklyn Nets caliber team. They've got a team, especially when Immanuel Quickley is in the lineup. They have a lineup that makes sense. Like, if you think about it, all the bases are covered here. Immanuel Quickley at point guard, Ochai Agbaji at the swing, alongside Grady Dick at the other swing spot. Then you have Scotty Barnes at power forward. I don't like to call him a power forward. I get it. He is more of a playmaker. But let's think about the defensive positions first. On defense, he's definitely a power forward. And then Jakob Poeltl at center. That's a team that makes sense. That's a team that is going to function the way it should. And it really did. You saw great performances up and down the board from all of the players. Immanuel Quickley coming back was really able to show kind of what the blueprint could be for the next couple of years if this team ever gets fully healthy. When you start to see all of these players playing the role that they should be playing, getting the ball into their spots, it was a breath of fresh air. It was very nice. They were able to cap the 11-game losing streak. And I've heard people say like, oh, well, this is bad because the tank is off. I don't think it would be good if the Toronto Raptors lost every single remaining game. I think that losing, just getting a high draft pick is important. I don't think that mentally destroying the players who are currently on the team is a good long-term strategy. I don't think that the Toronto Raptors should be in the history books setting franchise records for losses in a row. I don't think that's productive. And it's also not like the landscape has changed around the draft. It is so much flatter at the top of the draft that losing, or however many games are left in the season, 40-something games, it's not going to change your percentage chance from like 5% to 50%. It's like going from 10% to 14%. And I'm not suggesting that the Raptors win the rest of the season or even have a positive record the rest of the season. What I'm saying is that I don't think that they should be as pathetic as they have been. I want to go back to the competitive losses. I want to go back to winning a game every couple of contests. That's what I'm talking about. So put things into perspective here, people. Let's not overreact here. If they win one game in 12, chill. Next up, the Toronto Raptors. They don't have a ton of rest. They're going to be playing the Orlando Magic, who are pretty banged up at the moment. They are one of the better teams in the league. However, they are missing some of their top guys, and they will be playing in Toronto. I think it should be a pretty close game, but the Magic are a special defensive unit. Jamal Mosley has done a really, really good job with this team, coaching them up. They have a lot of really strong perimeter defenders, Jalen Suggs, Jonathan Isaac. They've got a great core of defensive players, and they don't make any game easy. That said, they are missing some of their big guns. Franz Wagner is out. Paolo Banchero is out. Mo Wagner, their bench center, brother of Franz Wagner, also out. So those are three big guys in their rotation. Their two star players are out. So they've had a lot of struggles scoring the ball. It'll be interesting to see how the Toronto Raptors play against the Orlando Magic, but I do think that they have a chance of winning. The game is at home. If Wagner or Banchero were playing, it would be a lot harder because then they'd be more dangerous offensively, but they've struggled to score even though they're a very good defensive ball club. But what do you think about my evaluation of positions within the NBA? Do you think that I'm right? Do you think that those types of skills really matter when it comes to running the point? Do you think Scottie Barnes still has potential in that area? Could he be a lead ball handler in the NBA? Let me know here in the comments and also on Twitter and Blue Sky, where you can reach me at Raps Report. I love talking to Raptors fans, always try to answer your questions, respond to your comments, and please leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Always helps the channel. And as always, thank you for tuning in to Raptors Report, your source for in-depth Raptors content.